Hello class. Hopefully you all got my email about having a live stream question and answer this morning. And I'm just going to go ahead and if you come on the chat, type your name, say hello, let me know that you're here. If you have any questions for me about blending or shading, just type your questions into the chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the videos. I know a lot of you still need to watch the newest videos, which are on this week 4. Good morning, Paolo. Good to see you here. So if you haven't watched the video yet on week 4 about shading, please do so. If not, I'm going to go ahead and just talk about it really quickly. And one of the things that we talked about and that you're probably getting really sick of talking about are the basic shapes. So here in this drawing I have an example of the cylinder and the shading pattern on a cylinder. And the point behind this is that this is kind of an example of how to draw a basket. And a basket is made up of cylinders. I think what we're forgetting is to really try to generalize whatever is a cylinder gets the cylinder pattern. And as we saw in this example, a lot of you who tried to draw clear glass, that gets to be a little different because there's a lot of reflection and just strange value patterns. But if we're talking about something that's solid, it's a cylinder and it gets the cylinder pattern. And this is an example of a cylinder. This is just wicker. And the wicker had flatter pieces that are coming over the top and under the bottom, over the top and under the bottom of each of these cylinders. And what makes this drawing look three-dimensional is the fact that these cylinders have the cylinder shading on it. It also shows where the flat pieces go over the cylinder, it gets a curved line because the cylinder is a curved surface. Then it kind of flattens out again, and it goes under the cylinder, and it comes back up, and then it gets another curved line as it goes over the cylinder. So my point is just start thinking in your basic shapes. And a lot of you had problems, I think, with the blending part. So I just really want to stress the importance of getting a blending stump. And the blending stumps are really going to help you get rid of heavy lines and to help you transition in between areas of shading. Okay, so these things here with your 18 by 24 drawing paper, your vine charcoal, and your kneaded eraser, these are all things that you really can't get by without once we get to still life. Pen eraser for really small areas of light. So what happens is once we start drawing with this paper, good morning Mary Pele, good to see you. What happens is when we start drawing with this toned paper, you realize that your everything becomes a drawing implement. Okay, we're used to drawing with pencils and pens and things like that, but your eraser is going to be, you've got to change your mindset on what an eraser is. An eraser is not just for corrections, it's for drawing light. And these are the basic erasers that you need. And so I just want to make sure that you each have these things. If you don't have one of these blending sticks, and it comes in handy, like I was saying in critique, how a lot of you have tried to outline your objects like with a really dark line. And that ends up just really flattening out your image. So what we often do is we can put a dark line, but then we can take this blending stick and use the point of it and just kind of blend and create a gradation by kind of trying to blend away that line so that it's not so obviously different. Okay, so You can see here that where I can take the stick and just blend it away. And so you can always go back and refine, but what I'm talking about when I say don't put a hard line is you can go back and you can put just kind of a whisper of a line. In the area down here in your sphere where there's a coarse cast shadow, then you make that area really dark with a dark line. And then you can add dark under it and get the cast shadow. Some of you had cast shadows that were much lighter. If your sphere got really dark, I noticed that some of you wanted to have a really light cast shadow. And it makes sense that you would want to do that, because if you have a really light cast shadow, a really dark cast shadow on a really dark sphere, then you might lose, they'll run together. And what is good about this classic order of light is you do have, it's dark down here underneath because there's no light getting to it under here. But also, that little area of reflected light really serves to separate the bottom of the sphere from the cast shadow. If you don't have that, it doesn't really come to life very well. So how do we then, let's look at this sphere that I've started. It's kind of got a heavy outline, and it looks much heavier on the camera than it does when I'm looking at it, the outline. But I'm going to try to correct that. So we have all this medium value in here. We can't stop here because we don't have a good core shadow, which should be on a value scale of 1 to 9, or I think it's 1 to 9 on the classic order of light. This should be, the core shadow should be an 8. The 9 is under here. It's as dark as you can make it because there's no light getting under there. The 9 should be here, and the reflected light will be in the back. Okay, so here's just a lot of the mistakes I'm seeing. Is, let's start with our kneaded eraser. So you can take out the highlight with a kneaded eraser. The thing that's cool about the kneaded eraser is once I take out that highlight, there is a line here, but it's not super harsh line. But whenever you take out areas of light, like our reflected light down here, it's going to be too harsh. Okay, so again, you can't stop there. You've got to get your blending tools. So to take this harsh area out, sometimes when I want an area of light, I'll take out a lot more than I need. Okay, and remember that this is spherical, so when I'm taking out the light, I'm taking it out in a circular area. And I'm taking out more of it than I need because I want to blend out this line, and that's going to push it back towards the center. And that made it, that blending made it a lot less sharp. And you can always go back. Sometimes there's a back and forth. Sometimes it just doesn't do exactly what you want it to do. Also, with this, I have a really harsh line here, and also another mistake that a lot of you made was that the shadow here, the reflected light here, you made it too bright. So really, if the core shadow is an 8, this reflected light is a 7. Okay, that's not that much different. So what I can do is I can do the same thing here. Just blend this a little bit, and then if I want to darken that, look at how easy that is to do. With a dirty blending stump, you can just drag over that, and it's still there. I might want to take a little bit more of it out, but the fact is I need to lay in some coarse shadow here because there's not enough coarse shadow. So I'm going to take my pencil and holding it like this. I'm not holding it like this. I'm not leaving hard lines in here. I'm not putting a lot of pressure. So I'm doing this, I'm turning it on its side, just so I can, and I'm applying like a very light pressure, because I want it to start off as tone. I don't want it to be, I don't want it to scratch the paper. I don't want to have to deal with getting hard lines out with the blender or the eraser. And usually I start with core shadow first, so it may seem like I'm kind of taking away from some of the progress that I've already made here. Also, note that sometimes when you want to blend, it gets dark on you really quickly because this puts down charcoal also. So I usually try to keep a clean paper towel for when I want to blend out areas without putting extra charcoal down. So you'll learn that as you go. Certain blenders, sometimes you want that extra bit, you want a dirty blender, sometimes you want a clean one. And sometimes when you're putting down a core shadow, sometimes you have to do it several times just to get it to be dark enough. And you know, there might be a point where you're like, okay, I am going to press it down a little bit harder now. And try to blend it with something dirty so that I don't take off too much of the core shadow. I'm going to bring some of this back here. So you can see I'm kind of just going back and forth. I don't like the order of the way I did things. I'm not quite used to that. All right, so just trying to get this to look a little bit more like the classic order of light. Alright, so that's getting close. The point with the blender is just that you always want to try to get out harsh lines. You want to create more fuzzy transitions, like there is here. And sometimes that requires a kind of a push and pull technique. You can put down lines with these blenders. I can't say it enough. These blenders are really handy if I want to draw something in a sheet and I want it to be kind of diffuse, or a drape. I can put it down there, and then I can say, well, okay, if this wrinkle in the drape is cylindrical, then it's going to need a highlight in the center of it, but it's also going to need some shadow and some form where it turns away from the light. So I might take, this is a 6B. For something like that, I might try to grab a 4B or a 2B, something this is a 2B, that's a little bit lighter, but still going to give me some definition. You know, and I might put down a little definition on either side. And then once you get to something like that, you might then take your blender and blend out to get rid of that harsh line. And so it's just, this is something that takes practice, and it's always a push and pull kind of thing. You've gotta really work with these things. So again, you have, you swallowed your ring. Well, that's not good. You have an over where the light is catching here, and it's under, you'll have a shadow, okay? Does anybody have any questions right off the bat about blending? If you do, please type it into the chat, and I'll keep going. This is just something that is on the first video. If you haven't seen it yet, it's like a week 4 video of how to draw objects with full value. So if you haven't watched that video yet, please watch it, especially if you're struggling. So I have this picture of the eggs, and we have here kind of how a drawing like this starts out. I did some sighting and measuring, all right, and I did kind of put things in place where they go, and then I started over again so that you could see two phases of the process. This is, as you can tell by all these smudges, this is just vine charcoal, and what I do at the beginning is I just try to rough in the value. After I get that line drawing that I like, I try to rough in the value using vine charcoal just so it can start to come to life. And really on this, there's vine charcoal can really only get so dark, and you can, leave smudges in it. But it's nice as a sort of underdrawing. So I try to rough in the shapes, and then I start pulling out light with my kneaded eraser. So something like these, you just pull out the light once you have this even ground down. You start pulling out the light. Next step, this is something that I've noticed a lot of you had issues with. When you get it laid out like this with vine charcoal and you have a pretty good plan going for what's going to happen with the drawing, that's the time where you bring out your charcoal pencils. This 2B is not what I want right now. You could do a whole drawing with this 6B or 4B and be just fine. But things that are cylindrical, you don't want a super heavy line here. But if you put a line, you do need definition, right? And so what you can do is you can take your blending stick and blend this line partially away, and it creates enough contrast there where your shape still has form, but it's not flattened out by a hard line. So it's still there. And then another issue I saw that people had is like maybe if you wanted to pull out a highlight, just leaving it like that. Well, it looks a lot more realistic if you can take your blender and just do small circles like this. I'm not pressing very hard. If I press really hard, I'll just leave lines with this blender. There is, Liderica, there's no difference that I know of between vine charcoal and willow. Those terms were always used interchangeably, as far as I can tell. I think they're really both just burnt sticks. So if you take your blender and you can smooth things out, it starts to look more seamless. Where you might want a hard line on something is where you see a hard line, more like on my finished version here, or almost finished. I'm not done with this area. So there's a little bit of a hard line here, and I actually emphasized it more than it is in the picture. So, I could then go back with the blender and just kind of try to make it a little more seamless. Soften it. And make gradations. Now, as far as something like making these kind of wrinkles, and this sheet, I don't know how well you can see it if on your computer, but this sheet has these really like severe heat damage of some kind of funky wrinkles in it. And I wasn't going to draw them, I was just going to ignore them, but then it seemed like a lot of fun, so I started drawing them. And things like this, remember this is just a cylinder, and if I draw it and it's too bright, I can go back over it and tone it down a little bit just by doing that. And if I toned it down too much and I need to put back in some light, I can just pick this pen eraser, and I could put some light back in there. If it needs more definition, which I don't really think it does, but if I wanted more definition, I can lightly put in just a little bit of darkness here at the edge, and I can either leave it like that, or I can use my blender to kind of spread it out a little bit and diffuse it. So we'll take this area right here. When I was doing this drawing, it was late, I was getting tired, and I just started making stuff up. I don't know why I did it, but in the sheet, I think maybe some proportions were off, and I thought, well, that maybe I would just add a few things to solve the problem. But now I think I'm going to go back and correct it. Here we have, in this area, which corresponds to that first long drape that goes to the edge of the page, it's got a really bright highlight. Before I started these wrinkles, I already did my cylindrical lighting on it, and this one I think I could bring out some more light. Like I said, this is a push and pull, and then a lot of times you'll put your light in and then you go back and smudge it with your arm, which is why a lot of people just don't bother with the bright lights till the end. But I like to be able to visualize what I'm doing and see some progress, so I just go ahead and put it in, and then I might clean it up at the end. I may not be able to get it to be as bright as it is in the photo, since I'm using the method where you put down the grayscale. You can always keep your grayscale really light. Alright, so let's look at this area. I want to talk about these wrinkles. So what I did for the wrinkles is I basically just put down some lines with a charcoal pencil, and then I went over those lines with the blender, and then I went back in with my pen eraser to pull out the center. So something like this, you just need to try to look and see what the fold pattern is. What surface is the line going across? Remember, a straight flat surface gets a straight line, a curved surface gets a curved line. So if the wrinkle, like for instance on this one, I put curved lines on it because it was going over the top of this, and so it needed a curved line. So think about that when you're doing something like this. You want to note the pattern. You want to note is it a curved surface? Is it a flat surface? So I'm going to go ahead, actually before I do that, I need to just lay in a little bit of value. What I wanted to do is to try to match this to the picture over there. And so what I'm going to do is start by just kind of diffusing this line a little bit. Because I don't want that to look like a crevice anymore. It's not, it's just a value change. Diffuse out that line. Okay, that's actually an area of light, and then next to where this goes up, it connects to the edge. that's a little bit problematic too, and I have some dark lines here. That I need to get rid of. Don't be afraid to make corrections. You can corrections, if you're afraid of making corrections, you won't make any progress. So you gotta really think about that. I think this was another mistake here that needs to come out. There's a little bit of a line there, but this is also an old line that I want to get rid of. So nobody has any questions. I'm just going to lay in some more darkness in here because that area is pretty dark right here. To the left of this second thing, there's a good amount of darkness in here. So I'm going to lay it down with the edge of my pencil, and by putting this darkness here, not only am I following the picture, but it's also creating contrast for this, which is pretty bright right here, with the exception of this little area. So whenever you use your eraser or your pencil, you're probably going to follow it with the blending stump. Or if you don't have a blending stump, you might use your paper towel. You can put your finger in the paper towel and blend with your finger through the paper towel like this. Okay, so that might be another way that you can blend. Okay, so Laderica, you said, I don't have a viewfinder, but how would you use it for the drawing? And can you make one on your own? You absolutely can. I also have some still in my office that you could pick up. But the viewfinder is super easy to make. All I've done is I've taken a piece of cardboard and I measured 3 inches by 4 inches. And the viewfinder just acts as, it's like a camera lens opening. So if I wanted to, let me see if I can get that to focus. If I wanted to frame out a new composition, I could see one through my viewfinder, like that. Let's say that could, it's sort of like, it's just a way for you to frame a composition. So what you do with a viewfinder, a lot of times in class, when we have we're drawing standing up using an easel, we can clip this to our drawing board and look through it and try to find the perfect composition. The reason that I have them use these is they're 3 inches by 4 inches, which is directly proportional to the 9 by 18 paper. I'm sorry, the 18 by 24 paper. So what you can do, you can use a viewfinder. You could also use your cell phone to kind of zoom in to an area on your still life and crop it out. But what you'd want to make sure is if proportionally, is it the same dimensions as your paper, so that you can really try to get a good crop. And I checked that with my phone, and my phone happened to fall into this 3" by 4" dimension. So if you multiply 3, okay, so this is 18 by 24 paper. So if you multiply the 3 by 6, you get 18. And if you multiply the 4 by 6, you get 24. So they're exactly proportional. This paper is 6 times larger than this opening. And so the idea is use it like a camera lens. Try to find a composition that's dynamic, and then you can imagine how it fits on your paper. The other thing you can do with the viewfinder is you can, what a lot of people do is they'll measure off 1" increments, and then they'll put a string and create a grid that has 1" cubes in it that goes across the viewfinder. And then when they're starting a drawing, they'll put that same grid on the paper. So there'll be 3 cubes this way and 4 cubes that way. And you can put that exact same grid on your paper. And when you do that, you kind of have these landmarks to go by to enlarge your whatever subject that you're looking at through the viewfinder. So that's been done for centuries, this idea of creating a grid that's in your view, and then a grid that's proportionally the same on your paper, so that you can know how large to make something. You can also just put hash marks, which is what I did here, at every inch, and then put some hash marks on your paper in vine charcoal. So that's how we do it. Easy to make if you have an X-Acto knife to cut your window out. And we'll be using this for still life, because the idea for still life is like I've done here. We want the drawing to be a crop of a larger image. When they're looking at your portfolio at Georgia State downtown, or wherever it is you decide you're going to transfer to, when you're done with your 2 years here, they're going to want to see this kind of drawing. They're not going to want to see a white page with something in the center of it. They're going to want to see a full-on, interesting composition that is dynamic, that has diagonals on it, that kind of make it exciting, that isn't just a central composition with something in the center. This has diagonals, your eyes kind of follow things. They want this kind of thing in your portfolio, and this is your chance to do it with help. That's what we're doing. When we get to still life, you need to understand that those are going to be your portfolio. There's at least 3 things that are going to be in your portfolio for when you transfer. When you go down to Georgia State, once you finish here, if you're in an art program, you have to apply for it there with your portfolio. Okay, so you can't, it's not just that you're done here, you go there and you're in. They want to see your portfolio, and then they're going to accept you into the program after they look at your portfolio. And if it's not satisfactory, you're going to have to redo some things and reapply. So let's not do that. Let's get in the first time. By spending a lot of time on these drawings, I can always tell who's done something at the last minute. And that was something that I learned in college. There's no last minute in art school. It just doesn't. It's not physically possible. People know when you don't put the time in. All right. So I'm just kind of roughing in some basic value gradations, and then I'm going to pull out some more light. So this area is the light is coming out of this area. This is kind of like the side of this sheet, and it still doesn't look like the side of the sheet to me, because I think I made it a cylinder when I was making stuff up. So it might be hard to correct. It might be in this that I need a change in line direction, right? A change in plane equals a change in line direction. I'm still seeing the curved lines here, but really if you were to draw this in line, this has a curve, but this is flat and it goes back. So it might be, the lines on this sheet might be something more flat like this. Or would it go down? Trying to think. I might try it. I'll just stick it in this direction. I think this is probably going to work. Again, I did get a little bit carried away with these lines, I have to say. But it was fun, and that's why I did it. Alright, so if I'm putting in these lines, I'm going to just go back and diffuse them out a little bit. I don't know if that's the proper term, but make them fuzzy a little bit. And then I'll go back in and put in some light where I want them to be. And then I may need to go in and define them a little bit with, well, what also happens is with this, the light will be, it'll be too strong. So I'll need to then take some out, take it down a little bit in intensity. So again, when I'm doing this, I'm thinking about little cylinders. Okay, so it may not be obvious to you yet because I'm just kind of randomly putting in these things. And now if I want to define these things, I might need to put a little bit of a darker edge at the edge of it, of each one. And I'm barely touching the paper because I don't want it to be too dark. But when something curves away from the light, it goes into shadow, and that's what I'm trying to show. So I've tried to show the light. I've tried to show, well, I should say the highlight and then the light, and then the part where it's curving away into shadow. This one got too much light. And then I can always go back and soften that just a little bit. Alright, any other questions, anyone, about blending, about how to... I think that what happens a lot in this this section is that a lot of people kind of stop with the blending, or a little bit shy about the blending, and stop the push and pull before you really get anywhere. So what I would recommend is to don't be shy. Get in there. Get in there with your light. I'm even gonna just kind of take away some of this because I think it's too much. I want that light to be in there. All right. There was one other thing I wanted to go over before we, since I'm not getting a lot of questions. One thing was parallel lines for squares. One thing, a lot of you were asking, how can I better do those parallel lines? How can I see when the lines are parallel and when they're not? And one thing that, if you can get 2 of these bamboo skewers, you can check your parallel lines by just laying it down on your drawing. And if they converge too much. If there's perspective, they may converge. These two lines may converge back a little bit, and that's good. But if this might be off a little bit. And I think it is slightly off because it's close to parallel, but it might be opening up this way a little bit. And that's when you start, when you put your sticks down and you get this kind of a thing, that's when you realize it's going to start looking like your top is lifting up. So you can check your parallelness by doing this. You want all of these to be parallel, so you might even get a third stick and just see how well you did. See if you need to redo anything. These three should be sort of parallel. This one, I think this one, it should be more, it's close, like this. Okay, so that's just a good way to check your lines, check your vision. Use these sticks. The other thing was how to expand your value scale. So I noticed that a lot of you are, something I tell students a lot is don't be afraid of the dark, right? So don't be afraid to add some darkness. Don't be too shy to put it in there. A lot of times if you're looking at a white object, you can get confused. You can then, sorry, I was reading a question. I lost my train of thought. It says, are you going to be able to do a WebEx? Do you mean so that the whole class can meet together? A quick 5 minutes for you to give feedback on our sides. Paolo, what do you mean by to give? So if I do a WebEx with an invite, people can pop in and show. Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I can do that today after this. If we want to do either a WebEx or a Zoom kind of thing, we can do that. Thanks for advice with the parallel lines, struggling with them. Yes, the parallel lines are really hard, and it's that top of the square that gives me problems every time. So, okay. So, yeah, Paolo, can you share your, I don't remember if students or if participants can show their screens on Zoom. I think that you can. Yeah, I think that you can share your screen on Zoom. So, Paolo, do you want to do that today, or do you want to do that as a critique, like a final critique once you're done, or do you want to do that as an in-process critique before the drawing is due? Because we can do it. We could do it today. I can finish here and send out a link for Zoom, and we can schedule it for 11 or something like that, to give you guys time to get your stuff for an in-process critique. All right, anybody else out there, enter in the chat. Ongoing feedback. Yeah, I think that's more helpful, because that's what I do in the classroom. Is we draw together in the classroom, and I come around and I make the rounds in the classroom, and I'm able to see what you're doing, and students are able to ask me a question. If you guys would like, we could do a regular feedback gathering, where people can show the screen, and I guess what that would mean is that you would need a photograph of your drawing so you could put it in the screen, or I suppose you could try holding your drawing up. That might be a little more difficult, but it might work. All right, so I from experience, I seem to remember that a lot of students work on Fridays since there's not class. So I maybe what I'll do is I'll send out a doodle poll, which is it's like a little questionnaire that I can send out to all students. I have 40 drawing students, and I can send out the poll to say when is the best time to do this, and then whatever the majority would be, then I will select that time. And you can always just say, email me and say, hey, can I Zoom with you at some point today? And I'm usually able to do that. So I'm going to hang up here, and what I'm going to do then is after this I will go straight to Zoom, and I will send you all a link for a Zoom meeting. I tend to have problems with WebEx, that's why I'm choosing Zoom. It just tends to have be less glitchy. So I will send that, and you guys grab your drawings and we can give each other in-process feedback. Don't be shy, because this is, we're going to see your drawing anyway. It's good for you to get feedback before you turn something in, right? Because then you can talk to your peers about the problems you're having, and we can help you. All right, so I'm going to hang up for now, and I'm going to send out a Zoom link, and it's 10:17. Why don't I make it for 10:30, so that gives you time to gather up your stuff, and gives me time to get that link going. All right, see you soon.